Meeting will come to order. The first order of business is the minutes from April 15th. Is there a, I'm sorry, from May 6th. Is there a motion? No?
I'll move to approve subject to modification.
What year is it? Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Hearing no modifications, all those in favor of accepting the minutes say aye.
Aye.
There are no nays. The ayes have it. Next, public comment. This is a moment where the general public is free to make any comments they wish. It can be something that's on the agenda or something that's not on the agenda. If it is on the agenda, you may want to wait until the item is called, but you don't have to. So is there anybody in the room who wishes to make public comment?
I'd like to make a comment on the zoning changes that are, the changes that you're making every 8 years on the Williston.
Okay, for the town plan?
For the town plan.
Yep, you can do that now. Yeah, we're going to be taking that later, but it's up to you. I don't, it's completely up to you.
I think now would probably be a good time.
All right. Okay, come on up. If you can just, sure, and identify yourself for the record and.
I'm Don Weston, and I just would like to say on the, I'd like to see if you have make a zoning change, and what it is, or a boundary change anyways, for commercial, more commercial land. We have a building right there on Commerce, on the corner of Commerce Street and Williston Road, and the lots right next to it on the south side of Williston Road is residential. And if you go from the driving range, the old driving range, to the South Burlington line, everything on the south side of Williston Road is all commercial, except for this one little section, and we're right in the middle of it. And they've got the gateway through there, so you got the front part of the residential lots are commercial, and then it's residential in the back, and we'd like to see if we can make that all commercial. And one of the reasons, because we'd like to expand our business, and one thing, we'd like to keep business here in Vermont. Pierre and I, grew up here in Vermont. I've had my business for over 40 years, and I'm right on Commerce Street, and my sons have taken over the business. And Pierre's been in business since 2010, and he worked for another business before that, and they were in Williston. And he outgrew the building that he was in. He makes chimney supplies, and he's expanded the business. So in 2016, we built that building around the corner of Commerce Street and Williston Road, and it's a 40,000 square foot building, and he's outgrown that. And even at the time when we had built it, the guy that was in the zoning before, Matt Belanger, when he came and looked at it, he said, this is one of the best buildings in Williston, which I like it too, but he said, yeah, that he wanted to use that as a poster child of Williston. He said, I'd like to have more buildings like this here. And we did, we tried to make it look as nice as we could, but we would like to expand that. And we tried to expand, but we got turned down, so we ended out, and Pierre wants to expand his business, so we ended out, and it's growing. He's growing by leaps and bounds. So he actually bought a place down in Virginia and expanded down there because he delivers quite an area. And then we still, for 3-4 years, we've been trying to expand, and we've been turned down. So, because it's residential, so we've had to move a manufacturing plant down in Virginia. So we're adding jobs down there instead of here. We would prefer to do it here in Vermont, and his business is still thriving, and he's got to expand again. And we'd like to keep those jobs in Vermont if we could. And to me, if you look at that district down through there, you got UPS, and everything is all commercial down there except for that one little section right there. And to me, it makes sense to make that all commercial down through there, so it all looks uniform, and I think it would comply with the town future plans if it would all be commercial down through there. I've been, we've been in business here for quite a while, and we'd like to stay here in business, and if we could draw more people in here, well, if we could expand here, that means we'd do more hiring here, we keep Vermont jobs here instead of in out of state, and even where we are right now, if we could add on, we'd be paying well over $100,000 a year in taxes, which, I think is a substantial amount, and that would be money that would go to the town, and if we could expand here, we'd create more jobs for Vermonters. We would they would keep a lot of money in Williston. They would because the people, they have to buy gas, they have to buy groceries, they buy clothing, and so there'd be a lot of spending, and we don't, and it's businesses, so it's not like you're putting a burden on the schools, and it would, and since we're both Vermonters, we would like to have people build in Vermont and keep everything here. But his business is thriving, and we do want to expand it, and to me, it would just make sense if we could expand it in this area, and if we can make a little bit of zoning change just to make that, those lots from Commerce Street down to South Brownell Road, if we could make them that all commercial down through there, it would just, I think it would fit in with the area and it'd make it look better, and it would be good for us.
So I'll kind of back Don up on what he's saying. So really what we're asking the town to do is relook at the Gateway West line. So we actually acquired the lot next to us, which basically is the same depth as our building. So we're looking actually just to add on to our building, expanded about 30,000 square feet, give or take. What we didn't realize is the front half of the lot has got a house on it. The back half of the lot is empty. Well, the gateway runs through the middle of the lot. So the front half is zoned commercial with the house, the back half is residential. So we were turned down on expanding the building. Again, the business is growing, we have to make decisions that are good for the business. So we had a distribution center in Virginia. We ended up having to expand that, and now we have manufacturing in Virginia. But to date, about 38 jobs have left the state because we couldn't expand here. We still need to expand. We still want to do it here because our families are here. I don't like traveling down to Virginia. So, the best thing for us, and I think for the town of Williston, again, the properties along Williston Road are no longer residential. They're all investment properties where people have, either renting the properties. And there's only like 3 or 4 houses. I think if we extended our building with the aesthetic, look that we have, it's beneficial for the town. We bring more tax dollars. We don't tax the system, as Don was saying. So, we're not putting kids in schools. We have employees that come in, they go to work, they buy coffee on the way in, they buy gas, they shop, they eat at lunch, and then they leave the area again. So I think it's good for everybody involved. Again, I grew up in Barrie. I'm a lifetime Vermonter. Don's a lifetime Vermonter. And we would really just prefer to do business here, to expand our business here, because, the business does well when we can touch it. When we have to put it outside of the state, I have to travel more, right? So these are the things. So what we're asking for is for the town to look at the Gateway West. And if they do nothing more than just move the line out of the middle of the property that we bought, that would be fantastic.
I think, there's 2 things in the draft plan. One says evaluate changes where industrial uses on Commerce Street abut residential users on Kirby Lane. Is that about?
Right, yep.
And then there's another one that says, evaluate changes where commercial industrial uses abut residential uses on North and South Brownell Road. So, there's no guarantee that the line's gonna change, it's just, but it is in the town plan that it's, I would say this is a reflection of planning and zoning knowing that's a problem and it should be evaluated. That would be my way of reading it. Eric? That kind of thing.
Yeah,
It says evaluate.
Yeah, and this was an application for a specific plan a couple years ago the Planning Commission considered. And it didn't advance past the planning commission, but certainly this has been recognized as something to explore further.
And one thing, these would be good paying jobs. It's not like in some of the box stores or whatever. And you know, we were brought up here, so we want to keep the business here. And that's, you know,
Yeah, we definitely appreciate that.
And three things that public engagement told us was that Williston people are generally accepting of existing non-conforming uses within the zoning district. People, I think, in the town understand the importance of keeping local businesses, locally owned businesses. You know, the grand list, you know, we're losing grand list with the box stores. Maple Tree Place went from 105 million to 77 million over 20 years. So we're losing grand list on the retail, commercial buildings that we have. This is a way to add to the grand list.
Actually missed it, there's 15.2.6 is also specifically about Gateway West. So I think as far as this agenda, I mean, it's this thing we're discussing, I can't, if you're asking to make sure that it's in the town plan, I would say I think it's there.
Yeah,
Section
yeah, just
15
any consideration
Yeah,
we can
yeah.
get, we would appreciate it.
I think they're asking for our help and what
Yeah.
can they do, you know?
yeah, so we could add on here instead of
Yeah.
in Virginia.
What's our best path forward? And it sounds like you're gonna be looking at the Gateway West, but, you know, anything, what we're saying is, we wanna be here, we wanna bring jobs here, we wanna expand the business. So, you know, we're asking for help. How do we do that in the best way to, you know, in the best fashion for our company, in the best fashion for Williston, in the best fashion for Vermont?
How you address your problem specifically, I'd have to look to Eric for how to say it. Like, all I can do is tell you that it is in the town plan.
Do you want me to follow up now, or? Yeah, I would just say ultimately for the select board, items in the town plan, you know, you can task, you know, in this case, it'd be the planning commission, if you want the planning commission to, well, prioritize looking at that upon an adopted town plan. Whenever there's revision of zoning, it lives in the development bylaw that the select board adopts upon the, usually the planning commission will start that process, but the select board can direct the planning commission to prioritize things on their work plan as well, so.
Okay.
You've got those tools available.
Right. Okay, so, this is probably not a great, way to end it, but, we do move at the speed of government. So, that means that there's a process that we would have to follow, and, you know, you've made a great, a very powerful statement, and, I hear you.
Yeah.
But there's a process that we're gonna have to follow, and, so
And we totally get that,
Yeah.
right? So, you know, basically what we're asking is, you know, what we're understanding is every 8 years, you guys look at the town plan and you look at certain things. We went through the planning commission and, for whatever reason, it didn't progress, right? But I think we're in a different atmosphere today than we were 4 years ago.
Yep.
And we're hoping that this can get addressed, the line for the Gateway West could get looked at and adjusted according to what today's atmosphere is versus what it was 4 or 5 years ago when we started this process. We still need to expand, thank God. Things are going well, and you know, we're a Vermont business, which most of our business is done outside the state. You know, we sell chimney supplies throughout the country. We manufacture here. And that's what we're looking to do is build our manufacturing team and do more to build the business and keep it local. So, you know, that is really what we're looking for, is that gateway recognition to get that line analyzed to see if it still makes sense in today's atmosphere.
Okay.
How can we follow up with them, Ted, on this?
Well,
let them know?
I'll talk to Matt and Eric, and I can report back to the board under like new business or something the next time we're here. But that's about all I can say for tonight.
And that's great. And anything you need from us, we're at your beck and call.
Yeah, okay.
We're really motivated to get this
All right.
moving.
Thank you for listening
Thank you.
to us.
Thank you for
very much.
coming in. Any other public comment in the room? Is there anybody online, Eric?
No one, no one online.
Okay. So, next on the agenda then would be the liquor license applications.
Two this evening for the select board. The first, so acting as a local liquor control board, the select board's asked to consider a first-class license for the new hotel that's getting ready to open in Finney Crossing, Town Place Suites. Application is before the board for a first-class liquor license. I've got the general manager, Billy Quinton, on Zoom, and I'll connect Billy right now. Billy, looks like you're connected. You just need to unmute your microphone. You can share your video as well if you'd like.
Hello. Sorry, my video is not working well.
No problem. We can hear you okay.
Okay, perfect.
With the select board.
So, this is Billy?
Yep.
Hey, Billy, hi, this is Ted Kenny. We can't see you, but can you see us?
I can see something that says Town of Williston.
Okay. That we are the town of Williston. Anyway, so I understand there's a liquor license application. If you could tell us a little bit about the gist of it and what you're looking for.
Sure. So we are the new hotel in Williston. It is the Town Place Suites by Marriott. We are a 115-room extended stay all-suite property. We're looking to sell just beer and wine out of our market. It's a very small market. And basically, it'll be like a limit of 2 drinks per person.
So it's more of a takeaway kind of thing than a bar? Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Yes. Yep.
Is that the right license for that? I always get those mixed up.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, actually, first class is
Second
just
class.
beer and wine or something like
I thought one of them was for like if you were buying it.
Right, that second class was like grocery,
Right.
so wouldn't it,
Hang on, Bailey.
Sure.
I would think it would fit into that one, and if they're not opening it and consuming it there.
Yeah, second class licenses for stores that sell beer, wine, or tobacco products.
Right, so doesn't this feel like that would be the right license?
So just to clarify, I'm sorry, we would be opening it at the desk, but there is still just a limit of 2. And they have to consume it in like our view, so they have to be in our lobby area.
that. Okay,
Alright,
that's
okay.
all right.
Alright, then never mind.
Good question, though.
And have your people gone through the training yet?
Yes, everybody has been certified.
Okay, great. Questions or concerns from the board? If not, a motion would be in order.
I move to approve a first-class liquor license for Town Place Suites.
Is there a second?
Second?
Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The vote is unanimous. There are no nays. The license will issue. So you got your license, although I think there's more to the process after this. Yeah.
Sure.
Don't start tonight.
We'll approve it. The town clerk will approve it. Then the State Department of Liquor Control will go into their process. So you should hear from them shortly, I'd imagine.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next would be the permit request from Toscano Bistro.
Yep, this is Toscano Bistro in Cottonwood Crossing. They've applied for an outdoor consumption permit, looking for outdoor seating for 30 people. Staff has no objection. They have their zoning permit and their required wastewater allocation for those added seats. Staff recommends approval of the outdoor consumption permit.
Okay. And nobody's here from them?
No,
That's fine. Yeah.
you approved the indoor license a
Yeah,
while
yeah,
ago,
yeah.
so
And they're
I told them it probably wasn't critical.
No problem with the license we gave them a few months
A
ago.
couple months ago, no issues.
The required wastewater allocation, that's just because there's more people drinking and using the restrooms?
Yeah, it all goes down to the number of seats for the restaurant. It's just making sure we've sold enough wastewater allocation. We do it on a seat basis for a restaurant, and they have enough allocation to have the capacity for the outdoor seating as well.
This is the old Junior's Cafe, right?
Yep.
So any other questions for Eric? If not, a motion would be in order.
I move to approve an outdoor consumption permit for Toscano Bistro.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous. There are no nays. The license will issue. Okay, great. That would then bring us up to Chittenden Solid Waste District FY '26 budget and update. Good evening.
I get your
Good
PowerPoint.
evening. Thank you very much for your time, and Eric, thank you for driving. My name is Sarah Reeves. I'm the Executive Director for the Chittenden Solid Waste District, and we're here with Kelton Gaske. Kelton is the Williston rep on our board as well. And so we are here to present to you our fiscal 2026 budget proposal. Next. And for folks who may be tuning in who don't know who we are a municipality that was chartered in 1987 at the request of our members, such as Williston, to manage the waste generated within Chittenden County on their behalf. So we are responsible for managing that waste in an environmentally sound, efficient, effective, and economical manner. And that is everyone that we serve. What I want to focus you on that particular chart is the pie chart, and that is basically in general the three sources of our main revenue. And what is not part of our revenue is any local taxes, no local property taxes, sales tax, income tax, and we do not receive any support from our member towns, and we do not send you a bill. We do provide Williston with some payment in lieu of taxes and with impact fees for our facilities, but we do not send you a bill for our services. Next, please. And while we're here, I often get this question too. We are here because our charter says that you get a vote and that you need to vote for our budget. So in the budget process, each city and town that is a member has one vote. It is not weighted, so you all have equal say in our budget. Next, please. And also, the other question I get before I get to the budget is, how are we doing? People like to know where we can do more and how we can do better. So I point folks to that column number 3. Of the just over 300,000 tons of trash, or just solid waste that was generated in Chittenden County, about 123,000 was landfilled. Of that, fully half could have been diverted either to recycling, to composting, to special waste such as light bulbs, batteries, things like that. So there's a huge amount of opportunity for folks to take a look at what they are throwing away and to see if there's another place for that to be. And we are focusing our attention, a lot of our outreach and education on food scraps, because that is the largest component of what is being thrown away that can be diverted and should be diverted. Next, please. Okay, down to the nitty-gritty here. Actually, I should pull up my side as well. So in our fiscal 26 budget, it actually doesn't look much different from our fiscal 25 budget. We are anticipating revenue after the cost of goods sold are subtracted out of just over $16 million. We are budgeting for expenses at just under $16 million. So this budget is essentially breaking even after all the transfers and whatnot go through. Next, please. And this is a chart of basically what we told you before, kind of, but for this particular budget of where that concentration of income is. And you're going to see another version of this pie chart. So this is the first one. This one is at $30 a ton for the solid waste management fee, and that fee tends to represent anywhere between 20 and 25% of our revenue in any given year. That changes depending on how much revenue comes in from the sale of recycling and sale of compost, and how much money comes in from tipping fees, which is our user fees, the fees that we charge our customers who bring material to us to manage. So at our drop-off centers, at our material recycling facility, at our compost facility, and at our environmental depot. So those are the three main sources of our revenue. Next, please. And then on our expenses, this is tended to be about the split. Most of our expenses go towards materials management, and that means that the money that we pay to haulers to move material either away from our drop-off centers, to move material that is sorted at the MRF to market. So our hauling services, takes up the bulk of that fee, those expenses. It's also the contract that we have with Casella to operate the materials recycling facility. And just after that, materials management, the hauling services, our next largest expense is payroll. Next, please. And as I mentioned, this year to next year, it is just about break even. So we can move on to the next slide. And fee changes. There's not much going on with fee changes this year, which is good. We are going to increase the price of one bag at our drop-off center, the small bag, from $3 to $4, but we're also increasing the volume allowed. So going from a 13-gallon bag for $3 to an 18-gallon bag for $4. Our mattress prices are also going up, and we have just finalized that contract, the new contract with our vendor. So I apologize, I don't have the increase change there, but they will go up because our prices with the vendor have gone up. No increase at the materials recycling facility, no increase at the compost facility, no increase at the environmental depot. The big change for this year is with the solid waste management fee, and I'm going to spend a big bulk of time talking about that.
Can I ask you a question on the first bullet?
Absolutely, of course, yes.
I was curious that you would raise the price on a small bag, versus a large bag. What was the thinking?
So basically the reason that we did that was because the 13 gallons wasn't actually corresponding to a lot of what our customers were bringing in.
Yeah.
So they were paying for a medium-sized bag, and we felt that they were paying more really than they should for the medium bag. So right-sizing the small bag and making it so that the dollar amount corresponded to the gallon size for the small bag, it'll be a little bit of less money for folks who mainly bring in an 18-gallon
Right.
bag versus an up to 35-gallon bag. So if you're not generating that much, you're paying more for generating less. So it was more to kind of even it out.
Oh, interesting. I'm glad I asked the question.
Yeah.
Because that makes more sense. You're actually making it less expensive for somebody who's just a little bit over this.
Correct. Yeah, that 13 gallons was just not quite enough. And it's kind of tough to find. You can find a 13-gallon, but people are trying to buy more of the 18 to 20 to 22. That 18 to 22 tends to be like a trash compactor size bag.
Oh.
And so they're really sturdy.
Yeah.
And you can get a lot in it, so it's a good value for the money. So that corresponds now to this $4 bag price. So
Good, thank you.
I would suggest that you look for those, and you can get a lot out of it, frankly. Next, please. So what I want to talk about tonight, I spent a good deal of time really on, thank you for the time, is on our solid waste management fee. So this fee is the per ton fee that is charged to haulers for Chittenden County generated trash that is disposed at Coventry, that's disposed in the landfill. So this is the charge that it's only on trash. It's not charged on recycling, compost, leaf and yard, special materials. So if you've thrown something away, that trash gets charged a fee. So those who are generating more trash will proportionally pay a larger share of that fee. And this is the administrative fee that the district uses to support our activities and some of our facilities as well to help us achieve that mission that we discussed. So what it fully covers, fully supports is the administration work, finance, compliance, IT, outreach and communication, education folks. It partially supports some of our facilities. Not so much the drop-off centers this year. They're actually showing a net, so that's great. Partially supports the organics recycling facility. It is the main source of support for the environmental depot and the rover program. And it does support our maintenance and roll-off. And then it also helps to fund our reserve funds, capital, closed landfill. We have a new one this year, MRF Project Fund, Operations Reserve, and our Community Cleanup Fund as well. And so why are we increasing it this year? We just increased it last year as well. It had been 12 years since we had increased the fee, and we raised it last year by $3. And that was because we were seeing a need in our closed landfill reserve fund. We have been, technically are at the end of our 30-year post-closure responsibility. However, we are not yet ready to go into the next phase of closure, which is custodial care. So we still need to do some work on the landfill. We've got some investigative work to do. We're generating more leachate, which is kind of that the landfill juice that kind of percolates down when it rains, or stormwater that collects that we have to pump out. We're generating more than after 29, 30 years, I think we should, so we need to figure out why that's happening. We want to make sure that everything is sound, and after 28, 29, 30 years, you really want to make sure that before you move into just a more general level of care that you are good. So we're going to spend the next couple to 3 years working with some consultants and making sure that everything is good to move into that next phase, which is, again, it's really what that means, custodial care, is that you're not testing as rigorously or as frequently. It's just a lower level of observance. We would still be monitoring it, but not as, it's not required to be as frequent. But we're not there yet. So we know we needed to have more money in that reserve fund to take care of that.
And just pointing out, it's our landfill that is in Williston.
Correct. So we manage the 2 town landfills. We took over responsibility for managing those before we came on board. And then CSWD built another landfill. So there are 3 closed landfills that we are responsible for maintaining and making sure that everything is going as it needs to go. So once we have gotten the closed landfill, that all 3 of them, to the place where we feel that we can apply for custodial care, then we would do that with the state. But that is probably 5 years down the road. So the increase to the solid waste management fee last year was to boost that reserve, because you're only adding to it when the landfill is open and it's been closed for 29 years. So we knew we needed to add some more money in there, and we did. So we were able to bring that reserve up to where, at the moment, I feel it needs to be. This new need is much more urgent and much larger. So you may have heard that the materials recycling facility, the new one, hit a snag last year. And so we were unable to utilize the property that we had owned on Redmond Road because over the years, and particularly 22 and 23 with the heavy rains, basically turned that field back into more of a wetland than it had been the past decade. So it is now a mosaic wetland. It's not buildable at all. So we abandoned that site, and we were fortunate enough to be approached by Tim Casey, who owns Heinsberg Sand and Gravel. He had 38 acres also on Redmond Road, and we purchased those acres from him. So we closed on that deal in March, but that was an unanticipated expense that had not been built into our MRF budget. That was just the last bit that was unanticipated expenses. Delays due to COVID increased the prices. The general inflation that we've had since 2021 has increased all of the costs. So we have found that the cost of this project is about $4 million short of the funding that we have. So we needed to look at different ways to bridge that gap. And one of the things we knew we didn't want to do was to go back to the voters and ask for an additional bond. 83% of the voters in Chittenden County a couple of years ago approved a $22 million bond. And because our cities and towns do essentially guarantee that debt, should we default, should CSWD go away, any debts that we have would then be shared by pro rata and per capita basis with the cities and towns. We did not want to add any more risk to our member municipalities. So we knew we didn't want to do that. We looked at other funding options, increasing the MRF tip fee. We would have had to have increased that fee, the current facility, by at least $35 a ton. That would have put us significantly over the market rate, and haulers would have done what they do in the private sector and in the free market and taken the tons elsewhere, which would have just not helped the situation, obviously. And looked at, someone suggested increasing the drop-off center fees. That would have been an unfair burden on just those users, where everyone makes trash in Chittenden County, not just the 27% of the county who use our drop-off centers. Someone has suggested a per capita fee, which we do not do. We do not assess our member towns either per capita fee or any assessment. And again, the per capita fee would have been essentially likely you would have recovered that from your property taxes, and we did not want to add to the property tax burden, particularly after the last couple of years. So the most equitable, fair approach, we felt, was to utilize the solid waste management fee. Next, please. And the reason was because who pays that solid waste management fee? And it's everyone. If you go to the next slide, please. So all generators of solid waste in Chittenden County contribute to this fee as part of their trash bill. So it is built into the fees that haulers charge to their customers to collect the trash. So generally it's just one component of the overall bill. So it tends to be, we did the math, about between 5 and 7% of the bill you may have if you're a subscription hauler at the month. About 5% of that is our fee. So you're already paying it, it's built in. When we did the math, we looked at how much waste is generated by average household in Chittenden County on an average year. It's just over a ton, so 1.12 tons in the average household. So at $30 a ton, the current fee, your portion of that at average household is just over $33, just shy of $34 a year. At $40, the average household will pay just under $45 a year. So it'll be an increase of about $11 a year to the average household, of just under $1 a month impact to the increase of $10. But for us, the increase of $10 a ton means about $1.5 million a year. So if we're shy about 4 million and we can generate between 1.5 and 1.7 a year, that gets us nearly to closing the gap. And an interesting thing, when we took a look at our solid waste management fee over the years, I'm sorry.
Nope.
I'm a good advancing. I
try to guess sometimes. I can guess wrong.
My apologies. So we took a look at our solid waste management fee. And the orange line, that kind of goes through the middle, is the one that does a stepping stone there. That is what our fee had been. So it started in 1993 at $17 and some odd cents. Then in 2009, it jumped up to about $22. Then in 2014, up to about $27, and then last year to $30. And so that was the straight line and the jump. The dashed line is the CPI. And had we been adjusting the solid waste management fee according to the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, essentially the cost of living, as determined by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, you can see that dashed line is generally over the fee. Sometimes it meets it, sometimes it crosses. We were above for a little while, and then we crossed again. The dotted line is the garbage and trash index. And that is also an index that is generated by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And we looked at that because that is our industry. So we own several, obviously, solid waste management facilities, several transfer stations. We do some small hauling. And we have consistently, but for 1.5 years, lagged behind that cost of business. So had we been increasing according to the CPI, according to that cost of doing business, our fee today would be about $39.20, had we consistently done that over 22 years. So bringing us up to 40 now kind of resets the field for us and essentially brings us to even with what our cost of doing business would be. Next, please, Eric. Thank you. When we looked at this too, we looked at deciding to do a revised approach to this particular fee. And because the stepping stone process was not efficient, it did lag behind cost of living, we said, let's instead try to use small annual adjustments versus big leaps, big jumps. And again, tying that to an index, so not something that we're just making up. It would be as part of our annual budget, so it would come back to cities and towns every year as part of the budget, which would be vetted through our Finance Committee and our Board of Commissioners, and would actually have at least four different opportunities for public comment and public input. We have to provide our budget to our Board of Directors, Board of Commissioners in November before the next following July. So there's an opportunity there for comment. We have a public hearing in January. Our Finance Committee reviews it in February, and then it comes back to our board in March or April. So there are multiple opportunities for conversation and discussion. And what we would need to do looking forward would be also using this fee to fund our capital reserve. Once the new facility, the new MRF is built, it will no longer be contributing significant revenue to the capital fund, which it had been for the past 20 years. Every bit of what it earns will be used to pay for its operations, its own capital needs, and to pay the debt service. So this new facility will be basically its own enterprise fund and paying for paying for itself. That means we have to otherwise find a different way to fund the capital reserve to pay for increases, improvements to our drop-off centers, to the depot, et cetera. Next, please. So we're back to the next pie chart, and this is the income with that $40 difference. So there's about a difference of about $1.5 million between the operational needs that will be satisfied by the $16 million, and then in addition, every dollar of that $10 will go to this new MRF project fund. And next one, please. And this is, again, once this fund is utilized, that this is going to be a short-term fund just for this project. It will be sunset and be wrapped into the overall capital reserve. And we're anticipating between 1.5 and 1.7 million in this year, and hopefully also in fiscal 27. And that should close enough of the gap to where we can figure out other savings if we need to on that facility. Next, please. And I will leave you with a suggested motion to approve and take any of your questions on any topic you may have.
Questions from the board?
Thank you for coming in this evening and explaining this to us. I believe that you have a very valuable service to the Chittenden County. How do you determine the how do you identify the amount of trash not properly sorted?
Just in general, yes. So we actually, the state did a waste composition study a couple of years ago. So what we do is we take a look at those numbers, and they are literally at the landfill, they are at the transfer stations, at the transfer stations. They also went to our MRF and sorted through our residue there, and they hired a company, and they sort through the trash piece by piece by piece by piece, and they weigh it all. So what we then do is we extrapolate the population of Chittenden County. In past years, we have also done our own waste sort, so to verify the numbers and just to make sure that Chittenden County wasn't any worse or any better than the state. And we tended to be a little bit better at diverting, but mostly it was fairly consistent. So for these numbers, we utilized the state's most recent waste characterization study, which is 2023, I believe. So pretty recent.
Sometimes I wonder what happens if I don't clean out my peanut butter jar.
So we would love you to use up the peanut butter, right? So you get every last bit out of it. And really for containers, for what we ask is that they first be empty, so as empty as possible, and rinse them if you can as well. And then that's it. We don't have to put them in the dishwasher. You don't need to be too finicky. Empty is the key. Rinse is great.
And the new recycling center, that will be automated and it will...
Yes, so we're still going to need people, though. People are still a big component. Right now at our recycling facility, all the containers, so those peanut butter jars and everything, those are all sorted by people. So there's every person on the line is looking for something in particular. They're looking for either laundry detergent jug, or they're looking for water bottles. They are looking for particular items and throwing them off the belt. It's extremely inefficient, and it's a very, very hard job. It's a very tough environment. The new facility, machines are going to do the primary sort, and people will be quality controlling the machines. The machines will be rated to be able to identify between 92 and 95% of the material flowing under the belt, and then the people will pick up what the machines leave off. So we still will need folks to do that job. The critical component will be at the very first belt. That's called the pre-sort, and that's where everything comes up before anything has gone off into its various bins. And that's where the bowling balls get pulled off, that's where the garden hoses will get pulled off, and the bags of garbage. So we need people there, about probably at least four people there to do that work. And then the machines will start to do their job.
Thank you. Do you still, are you part of the, I don't know what you call it, the oil waste at the end of the airport? I
Describe
think
that.
of the name of the road. It's not Patchen Road, I don't believe, the other one.
Oh,
Like I have a farm.
yes,
You know, and I change the oil in the
Yes.
tractors, and I get 30, 40 gallons of waste oil some years.
yes, so at our environmental depot, so you bring us your waste oil?
Yeah.
Yes, so that is us as well. And we use that waste oil to actually heat our building.
Heat the building?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. They always ask me about the hydraulic oil and the engine oil, and I mix that. I don't know if I try to keep it clean.
Separated is always best, but we will take it and we'll manage it. But yes, that is our environmental depot, that is CSWD as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for using our services.
Any other questions from the board?
Looking at the two indices that you mentioned that you're gonna use going forward, so if you had, and you may not have this number, but if you had been using these indices to adjust annually previously, what would you expect that annual increase would have been, just so we can think going forward what we might see?
So it all depends on, it really is the cost of living. So I don't know if the town uses a COLA for employees, but we do, and we utilize the Northeast Urban Class BC for our employees' COLA. So that would be one index that we would use. And I think this year we're proposing 3.06% is our COLA. So we would look at that. The garbage and trash index tends to be 1.5 to maybe 2 points higher. So we would look at both. And so on average, before the craziness of COVID happened and the past couple of years happened where we had that 7-8%, it tended to be in the 2-ish% range. Some years it was 0, which was odd, but generally it was around 2.5%, 2%. So hopefully, if they start to stabilize, that's likely what we'll see. We're seeing 3-ish now. So we're not proposing to utilize that index now. It's just going straight to 40 to reset, but likely it'll be that. And we use the 12-month average, so wherever kind of that lands, that final 12-month before it goes to our finance committee, that's the one that gets baked into the budget suggestion. And so we'll be locking in basically January's previous 12 months, even though it'll take effect in July. So we may be a little behind or a little ahead, but we'll tend to over, yeah.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
First, good job on the operating budget, and I'm very jealous if your benefits are only going up 3% because we.
Yeah, that was a shock, frankly.
Eric? I guess my only, and thank you for explaining it, but I guess my question was, or when I read the material, was that it seems like you'll make up the MRF shortfall in 2 to 3 years.
That is the goal.
But there doesn't seem to be any discussion about that being a 3-year extra tax. It seems like even your material, you're saying it's gonna go forever. Now, I understand part of it being the MRF. I don't think the MRF was throwing off $1.7 million of profit a year, though.
It was.
Really?
Oh, yes. And so the recycling markets have been pretty strong the past few years. And last year we contributed, it was about 1.5. Before that, we contributed over 2. So the past 5 years, even though there was a weird blip at the beginning of COVID, because so many people were staying home and the Amazon effect really kicked in, the recycling markets were relatively strong, particularly for the material that tends to be our bulk, which is cardboard and paper.
Cardboard, yeah.
It's over 70% of what we process. It's close to 77% is that material. So we've seen very strong markets the past few years. It is volatile, obviously, and back in 2017, 2018, it was in the doldrums. Our average commodity revenue at that point was around $40 a ton. Last month, it was around $135 a ton. A massive swing. So in the years where the MRF did generate that revenue in excess of its operational needs, all of that excess went into the capital reserve. So now all of that will be needed to pay its debt service. So that's why keeping slight annual adjustment, and there may not, the board may say, no, you don't need an adjustment this year. They have the final say. That will go to be able to fund to replenish the capital reserve. We are most likely going to draw down our capital fund for this MRF project. I will never leave it at nothing. That's not wise, but it will mean we'll get down to under $1 million, which makes me very, very, very nervous. So this is why now, raising it that large jump. And then to continue again, but small pieces. So not having to wait another 5 or 7 years and then jumping 5 or 10. It doesn't help us with our capital replacement plan and just the ongoing needs that we have with the 6 transfer stations, the multiple facilities, organic recycling, all of that.
I mean, I can't argue with the CPI thing. I am thinking that if you had been using the CPI and you were currently at $40, you'd be going to 50 to take care of your MRF thing, so. No, frankly, honestly, had we been, and this is what is frustrating, for me as well, is that had we been using the CPI, we likely would have had enough money in the capital fund to not have to borrow. Because we were extremely frugal, and we would have been able to plan far enough in advance. And we would also not be taxing the current facility. The current facility is 32 years old, and she's showing every year of her age. The facility is doing an excellent job, but it cannot do more than it's doing. And we need it to do more. We need it to grow. We need to be able to provide opportunities to recycle more materials, and there's no way that facility can do that. So had we been following the CPI and not making these big jumps, I think we would be in a better position with our capital reserve than now to have to make this big jump. So really the goal is ongoing stability. And if we get to a point where we're saying, we are steady stream and we don't have any major items coming up in the next 5 years, then the staff recommendation likely would be, there's no need to increase this year. I'll hold you to that in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, it's something where we know that we need to replace, or pretty much replace, but overhaul the Milton Drop-Off Center. I've had to kick that out to fiscal 28 or 29. That's $875,000. We know we're going to need to, hope we're going to be able to expand the Burlington Drop-Off Center. That won't be that expensive, but I'm pushing that out to 27. This MRF is the project, and so it's going to take up all of that. So we're working on our 10-year plan and making sure that we know what we will need, not next year, just next year, but 5 years, 7 years, 10 years down the road.
Thank you for the very thoughtful and thorough budget, so I appreciate very complicated ins and outs, so I do appreciate all the hard work to do that. And I also appreciate that you're probably not going to have a lot of public showing up to protest their $15 a year bill, and so sometimes we have to ask the tough questions.
No, I appreciate that. You certainly should.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting too, both Myers and Casella came to our meetings opposed just to the 33% increase.
Yeah.
That's a major increase to their businesses, and obviously that's the cost to the households, but businesses are going to see, and the town, are going to see hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. The hospital will probably see $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 increase to their services, and that's before any of their costs of doing business. That's just the fee that the haulers have to pay. Same with any large manufacturing facility. They are really opposed to the going up every year, because now every year if it goes up, instead of having to take an increase, pass it on, especially the smaller haulers who might not have a office staff that puts together an entire increase, as we did when I was there. I think it's, for them it's a lot harder to go, and when they're on the trucks, to then go back and pass on an annual increase, rather than, I think that was the logic on why it was every few years.
Makes sense.
Why we were passing on and I think the other piece is, I get there's more public comment to it, but it's harder to change it via ordinance, and there really is more knowledge than if it's just going through our budget with an annual increase, because a lot of times it goes to select boards, a lot of times it just goes right through our board and gets approved, and goes to select boards and gets approved. as a budget. So not going through an ordinance change for the solid waste management fee as it has in the past, and now we're changing it to go through the budget process, to me almost creates it as a, you know, it's an easier way for staff to push it on, but is it the right way for our residents to just have an annual increase for something that, you know, is that us being successful, increasing a tax effectively on our residents annually versus really, you know, going in every time it is increased? You know, I think on one of those slides, we've only ever increased it 4 times in our history, with one time being last year and another time being this year with a 33% increase. And I understand these are different times, but at the same time, you know, we're trying to fund this recycling facility with current revenues, not going back and funding it with long-term debt that we can pay the debt service on. So funding it with those current revenues, as you said, this isn't going to go down in 3 years. This is going to continue to rise. So we're jumping up 33%, and then it's going to be up another 5%, up another 5%. Again, it doesn't have to be, but there's that potential. And I think, you know, obviously the bag rates, you know, you won't see a change in those this year, but next year, I bet we'll be coming back, and in the budget, every single bag at the drop-off center will be seeing an increase. So every resident as well that drops off at the drop-off center will see an increase. So I just think it's you know, I would love to see us go back and look at, you know, a different way to fund this. I really don't think we should change the ordinance to allow it to be passed through the budget. I think it should be the way it has been, but I mean, it's up to you all. I just think, you know, it's a big change in the way CSWD, and this is my last year volunteering on the board, and I appreciate you letting me volunteer. I've enjoyed my time, and you know, I just think there's you know, do we need this MRF? Oh, I guess the last piece that's
Yes.
one more that's worth.
We need this
sorry,
MRF.
last piece. One piece that's worth noting is the MRF is used by really everybody in northern Vermont, and we all pay the same MRF tip fee. The only people who are going to be paying this increased fee to pay for the recycle facility, or pay for the new recycle facility, the increased solid waste management fee, are Chittenden County residents and businesses. And the reason they're not increasing the rate for out of, you know, for the islands or for Franklin County to be able to bring the recycle is to still be a market with the Rutland MRF, which is the only other MRF in the state operated by Casella. And I think, you know, they're not subsidized by any fee. Obviously they're a big company and have other ways of getting funding. That's not a municipality, but, you know, to keep in line. So really we're paying for a recycle facility and subsidizing. It's just worth noting that us as Williston residents are going to be subsidizing this through our trash bills for Franklin County, for the islands, and for anyone else who uses our MRF, because they will be paying the same rate that we do, but they will not be paying that $40 or any, because they pay to their own solid waste districts, not to our solid waste district. They operate their own solid waste district. So I've said enough.
Well, and to be clear, our board manages our local ordinance, so I think it's that the ordinance is up to the select board, but
It is not, okay.
it is not. So your responsibility is with our budget.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions from the board?
Come on, Ellie, I grilled these guys my first year. Come on.
If there are no other questions, there is a proposed motion.
I move to approve the fiscal year 2026 Chittenden Solid Waste District budget as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
There are no nays. It is unanimous. The motion carries. So,
Thank you very much for your time.
thank you. Pelton, thank you for your service.
Yes, thank
thank
you
you.
very much.
Thank you, yes.
Brings up Housing Trust Fund Policy Fiscal Year 2026 Program Allocation.
So I'll turn this to Melinda. The board's discussed this a few times. Melinda's made the final edits as discussed at the last meeting, and for your consideration this evening for possible adoption, and also to consider is designating some funds from the Housing Trust for FY26 to be able to implement the programs. The board may recall our inclusionary zoning with our payment in lieu of fee, that goes into this fund as well. There's currently a $60,000 fund balance there. The Housing Committee's recommended a $40,000 allocation for FY '26. The board can decide what to allocate, can allocate more money through the year as well. We're getting started with this program, so it's exciting to be at this point, but just some operational decisions for the board to make as we get going.
Okay.
So, turn to Melinda.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. I guess this was a pretty short memo, and if you have any questions, I can try to
Double
answer
checked,
them.
you got all of my questions, my concerns, so, all my edits.
I noticed just one small typo on page 3 in B. It looked like below, it changed it to $10,000, but in the program structure B, it still says 20.
Great, thank you. Getting that.
I think Melinda was waiting for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
It's a
planted to see if we were reading it. So, okay. Yeah, we have had this issue before us a couple of times. But are there any questions for Melinda or comments or anything else?
The only thing I still, is the need for us to approve a specific dollar amount for grant purposes. Like, I don't, like, going forward, I mean, this just could be potential just like processes, but, if there's a minimum amount that you want to keep in the fund, an award or a percentage or something, like what makes more sense. But I don't know. I don't know that we need to be the one who says like $40,000, like, versus.
I think it's in the policy, we just decided we were
Right.
comfortable with. I mean, I like the fact that it's, so this, my understanding is we have about 60, we want to leave
Right.
about 20, that leaves 40, right? But if you had some year where you had a whole bunch of fees and you had 150, would we really want them to use 130? Or, I think it could be a really quick, approval, at least the first few years until it becomes.
See how it works, and
Yeah.
that's, I mean, testing it all out and
Yeah,
seeing
no,
how it all
that's
works,
great.
so,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, is potential too, if the town works to maybe, if the town worked to partner with a housing developer to help for some acquisition or capital costs, a more significant capital investments, thinking about those components as well moving forward.
Yeah.
Just maybe to remind me, the town does help out people that build affordable housing with breaks on impact fees or sewage hookups, water hookups, things like that as well, correct?
Yep.
Any other discussion on the issue? If not, there's a proposed motion.
I'll move to adopt the Housing Trust Fund policy as presented and designate $40,000 from the trust to be utilized for programs in fiscal year 2026.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
There are no nays, the ayes have it, the motion carries. So,
Definitely almost
Thank
read
you.
insert amount, so.
Never assume anything. Right. Insert amount.
I got it.
next on the agenda, town volunteer processes. Craven, come on up.
Thank you. Hello. In your packet, you have results of a petition that I did. I feel as though this issue has not been given the attention it should for the last couple of years that I've been talking with administrators, and that there needs to be a direction from the select board to balance risk aversion with the benefits of having volunteers in the town. And thank you, Eric. I have a couple of slides. In your packet, you should have seen the petition, all the signees and all the comments that were received, but for people who didn't get the packet, I just wanted to, actually I can read it off there. If we can go to the next slide. No, I can't read it off of there. Okay. So we used to be very lax about waivers, and then we started a few years using waivers, which are a good thing to absolve the town of responsibility for mistakes volunteers make. But 2 years ago, in 2023, the waiver form was updated in ways that have made it practically impossible to do the kind of volunteering that I have been used to doing. A unique form must be prepared for each date and activity. Only town employees can prepare this form for signature. Preparation must be requested at least 48 hours in advance of the activity. Each volunteer must complete their own copy of the 2-page form, so you have to print paper and take it in the field and guess how many are going to be there. Power tools are prohibited, and no one under 18 can participate at all. These are things that I think are not acceptable in our town, based on all the things in our town plan about valuing volunteering in the town. Next slide. So the petition had a simple statement that the people who signed it supported, which is, we petition the Williston Selectboard to direct staff to make it easy for all Williston residents to volunteer on approved projects. Easy and all capitalized. So I put this petition online early in April and advertised it in mid-April on Front Porch Forum. As of Friday, when I printed things or took things off for you all, it had received 125 signatures. 121 were Williston residents and 4 were non-residents. I allowed non-residents to, because in fact we have some non-residents volunteering in Williston. One of the non-resident signatures was our Allenbrook School principal, who obviously has a vested interest even though she doesn't live in Williston, and so I count those as valuable. I reproduced in your packet all 29 comments. All were supportive. And I just thought on the next slide I would emphasize a couple of the comments. I just, from the 29, picked a few of the shorter ones. Volunteering is a way to give back to our community as well as a proven way to create strong, thriving communities. It's important to build community, not isolate ourselves from it. Thank you for addressing this bureaucratic hurdle, etc. And the last one, geez, Williston, let's get it together. This whole volunteer issue is complete overkill. And I think it was interesting that people that were just seeing on Front Porch Forum that there was a petition took the time not only to sign the petition but to make comments like this, so obviously they have some passion about it. The following slide shows some of the volunteer organizing I've done in recent years, or some of the volunteering, and there's a method to my madness with this. So this is kindergartners. I had to choose a slide that doesn't have any faces shown. Kindergartners planting a small oak tree down by Allenbrook School. The next slide, I'm going to go fast, Eric, if that's okay, because I don't want to take more time than we have to. This is a class of ecology students from UVM who was touring the area looking at what we were doing with volunteer work on that site. This is what's called Tree Island or Abazzi-Menahani near Allenbrook School, between Allenbrook School and the fire station. That's the fire station in the background. And these students were on a field trip from UVM, but as they were looking at it, they helped collect, as you can see, they're holding a lot of used tubes that were from the plantings from many years ago that these tubes were no longer doing anything. They were just now litter in the environment. So they, by helping collect the tubes, they became invested themselves in what was happening there. Next slide is some adults who are planting a sugar maple tree in April, in cold weather. That's that thing on the right with the stake and the blue tag. It's a sizable transplant from a local forest. The next slide is a crew from the Intervale Center who have sent a crew to us for 2 days a summer to work on invasives there and other places, and I always work with them. The next slide is Sustainable Williston folks with an instructor from the Intervale Center learning how to plant live stakes and fascines of willow and dogwoods. The next one is the same. And then the next slide is another cold day during the pandemic, as you can tell, a crew that had been working on these things. The next slide is back here in the Town Hall meadow, removing invasives. And the next one is beaver exclusion fencing along the Allenbrook behind the fire station. The last one is, or the next one is the same from a different perspective, so you can see where the Allenbrook is. That's a particularly steep slope where the beavers have eaten all the trees, and so there's erosion, and so when we replanted, we didn't want the beavers to take these trees, even though they can take all the ones around it. And finally, one other, just showing more up close, on the left side, You can see there's actually, that's Lynn Brown, who is a teacher in the Williston schools, volunteering her time on a weekend to be there along with some students and families who are there. Now, none of these are from last year. The last 8 slides you just saw all had 50% people 18 and under. So any of those activities could not have happened. And I just want to let that sink in. I have put all my efforts in the last year and a half into working with the schools so youth can do things in the environment like this, and I've done a lot with the school students through the school programs. But we really need to be able to have it be a community event, and parents need to be able to come as well. The problem, though, is beyond the under 18s. Our process has gotten very constrictive. If we can look at the next slide. This is an excerpt from the actual form. The red highlight part is just as I affirm I'm at least 18. That's the most egregious problem we have. But, and the top yellow parts are fine. That's just absolving the town from any responsibility. But you'll notice the last paragraph there says, throughout my volunteer service, I will comply with the town's guidance, standards, and specifications, and so forth. And if you look at the next slide, the top of that form that I signed, this was to prune the apple trees by the brick church last month. You'll see that the guidance that was included in this, the highlighted parts say between the hours of 7 and 5, and work cannot be performed above a height of a 3-foot step ladder. And my problem is that I mean, these are trees that are taller than a 3-foot step ladder can get to. I like to work when I can on the weekend and and after 5, and I've just absolved the town of any responsibility for what I'm doing, and now I'm told how to do it. And it feels to me like either you want to hire me and tell me how to do it, or I'll volunteer and we'll find a reasonable thing, like reasonable description. On top of that, this particular one, there were 2 other things in the emails I'd had back and forth that were not included here, so according to this, I couldn't do them. And so I'm just saying we're way over the top on the constriction. Next slide. I've been looking to the future, and I really want to have a Weed Warriors program in Williston, much like South Burlington's, where people can be trained in how to manage certain things, invasive plants, and can do it on their schedule when it's not raining or whatever. They're sort of it's sort of the way I operate, which is if it's not raining and it's the right time of year, I will do whatever invasive plant management makes sense, always approved by a town body like the Conservation Commission, Conservation Planner, Director of Public Works, or whoever. We also need more people maintaining our wonderful trails. And at Tree Island, which was Abazi Menahani in Abenaki, families and individuals, I would like to be able to adopt, quote unquote, like adopting a portion of a highway, adopt a tree or a group of trees and be able to maintain them on their schedule, on the weekend or whatever. And these type of efforts don't fit with a rigid waiver process that's based on the idea that you have an event that people are going to come to. And so I just feel as though we have to be aware of that. Next slide. I don't think anybody, well, there's one person put a comment in that they thought it was bad that we had to have a legal document to volunteer. But I can say that the reason for waivers is a valid reason, and I think most people support it, and I certainly support it. And also, nothing should be done by volunteers that isn't approved by the appropriate town board and personnel. Those are agreed understandings. But we should not make the process an obstacle to volunteering. In fact, we should encourage volunteering. And so on the next slide, my ask to you is to have the impediments removed. Don't solve only part of the problem. When Eric and I and Aaron met last September, most of our conversation was about getting a way for children under 18, youth, to volunteer. We need to solve the whole problem, and just solving part of it is not enough. And I think in solving the problem, we should involve volunteer leaders like myself and Catamount Center and Boy Scouts in that process, something that makes sense for everybody. That's my presentation.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
Yeah, thank you for presenting this to us, Chapin, you know, I mean, you know, please be patient with us. This is something that, you know, we're educating ourselves. Many of the rules in place today are based upon corrective actions of past, you know, incidences.
Really?
And that's what we have.
I was not aware that there was a past problem.
Well, it's not maybe in the town of Williston itself specifically, but, you know, it could be, you know, in other areas
Okay.
that not everyone is aware of.
My impression from talking with staff is that we are trying to keep our insurance policy as inexpensive as possible, and so the insurance industry is essentially dictating what we can do with volunteers. And I would comment that the administrators, Aaron and Eric, are very cordial, and we've worked very well together, but we've made zero progress because we have different objectives.
I have seen online, you know, too, that the scouts have also felt some frustration at their inability to kind of do some of the activities that they had wanted to do with the town. You know, one of my hopes that, you know, as we have an incoming HR director, I was like, and manager or director, is that, you know, we can work on some of this and get some of this clarified and update some of this policy. You know, speaking for myself, I am, you know, you are, you know, I think if we added up the hours that you personally volunteered between the school and the town, you know, it is immense. And you know, I take your opinion and your point of view very seriously, because I want to encourage you and the teams that you work with to continue to do so. And so, you know, I see it as a priority to make that, you know, feasible, and to look how to do that, and to balance the need for, obviously, you know, protecting the town interest as a whole, because again, it is all of us, and, you know, we all are paying that insurance that you know, so, but also to make it feasible, especially in this day and age when, you know, we want people to be more civically engaged, you know, and we need that as a town and a city and a state and a country, and a world, and so, yeah, thank you for all you do, and you know, I think it's something that again, you know, it is my understanding that we will be looking at, you know, further.
And I do want to clarify one thing, because I got this question in response to the survey. Boy Scouts come with their own insurance, and so they do not have the insurance hurdle, but they are getting the other administrative overhead and limitation of using tools.
I think they're just Scouts now. I don't think that they're Boy Scouts anymore, just as a point of clarity.
Okay. Thank you.
So, I will make a point to dig more deeply into this. I can't promise what the result's gonna be, though, and I wanna be honest about that. I mean, I don't want the town to do anything that would jeopardize this insurance coverage, and that might create a real pain in some of these administrative things. But I hear what you're saying, and I think you have valid complaints. I would want to respectfully push back a little bit on the petition, though, that, you know, the petition says, you know, sign here to tell the select board to make volunteering in town easy. Okay.
My problem is that I've worked for 2 years through the steps, through planning office people, through Aaron and through Eric, and the last meeting was with Eric and Aaron in September, and there's zero progress even since then.
I hear that.
And so I felt like I needed to elevate it, and I asked for time with the select board, and it didn't happen right away.
We've been a little busy, Jake.
And I know, this is not saying anything about your values, but it needs to be, I was hoping it could be addressed before this work season, which is the summer, and it looks like it's not going to be. And that's disappointing at best.
Yeah, I hear you, but I will try to dig into it a little bit. I wasn't complaining about the fact that the petition went out. I was critiquing the
Okay, the
petition,
petition.
saying, make it easy. I mean, we should, I'm gonna be silly
well,
here, but it's
and-
like having a petition saying, sign here, because say the town should have good things.
And to be honest, everything that I've suggested has been respectfully rebuffed by Aaron or Eric on why we can't do it. I have new ideas, but I didn't want to put any of them in anything that I said because I feel like the problem is one of direction, not of ideas.
Okay.
And the one idea I will put out there is that the waiver process should be separate from the approving the work and all that. That people should be able to online just sign up here. Here's my waiver information. You shouldn't have to go and sign something on paper each time you volunteer.
Yep. These are legitimate concerns, and that sounds like a good idea, and well, I'll get back to you.
Thank you.
I'll leave it there.
It's hard to see the kids out there outdoors, you know, doing something. And it's important that kids get outside
Yep.
and volunteer and learn to help.
Is that it?
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you very much. That would bring us to the town plan draft transmittal discussion. Good evening, Matt.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here tonight. More importantly, thank you for having the Planning Commission here tonight. And I hope I can be fairly brief in my comments, and then you all can kind of optimize for the amount of time you want to spend on this on your schedule. I know you're running a little bit over. The reason I'm here tonight is because the town plan rewrite has been unveiled, as reported in the Observer. So we've reached a milestone in this, rather lengthy and intense process. The Planning Commission has warned a public hearing on their draft of the 2025 Williston Comprehensive Plan coming up on Tuesday, May 20th, in 2 weeks from tonight. And that will be over across the road at the library. And Town Meeting TV will be covering it, which is terrific. As I think you all know, the plan document represents an incredible amount of work. Its foundation is a year and a half worth of public engagement, and despite all of that, it is not set in stone and has been truly an iterative process all the way up to this point, and will continue to be as the plan rolls toward transmission to you all. So Eric shared with you the link to the draft. I've received some feedback from some select board members. I've received a bunch of feedback from our planning commission members, and just so you all know, the second we warned that May 20th hearing draft, we started working on what we call the May 20th red line, which is the document that we'll discuss with the planning commission coming out of that hearing and say, okay, of what you advertised for May 20th, what changes do you want to make to it before you send it along to the select board? So that's where we are in the process. Someone at the Planning Commission meeting just asked me, Matt, what's your goal for May 20th? And I said, well, not to sound really uninspiring, but my goal is for you to vote this thing forward and send it to the select board so that we can stay on schedule. So in that timeline, we do expect the Planning Commission to hold that hearing and vote to move that document along to you for consideration for your portion of the public hearing process. And we plan and hope to return to discuss that transmitted version with you on June 3rd as the informational meeting, at which point you would then decide whether to begin your public hearing process. So just keeping these calendar dates in my head, this is all rolling toward hopefully a second select board public hearing in August. And what you get from the Planning Commission when you discuss it at the informational meeting, we would follow that same pattern we're following with the Planning Commission. You would ask us, hopefully, to warn that for a hearing on July 15th. You would open that hearing up on July 15th. You're required by law to hold 2 public hearings. July 15th is a great day for the select board to tell us anything they want to change, you want to change about that before you hold your second hearing, because then we can go back to the Planning Commission and do what the law says they have to do when you make changes, which is look at them and write you back a memo telling you what they think about them. And so we've built that into the schedule so that you can come back on August, changes in hand, Planning Commission changes, comments on your changes in hand, And if you're really feeling like meeting the deadline, voting to adopt that town plan that night, bringing us all the way to home plate before August 25th, which is the expiration of our current plan. So that's the process. We're really more here to talk about the document itself tonight. And what I described this to as the Planning Commission is, you know, we've still got at the staff level the rest of this week and most of next week to write in some of those red line changes for the May 20th hearing. We've already looked at some comments and tried to make some edits and be responsive to them, but you were given a link to the hearing draft for May 20th. That's the first time we've really released the full plan with all of its formatting and all of the maps and all of the structure there. And this is a great opportunity tonight for select board members to ask questions of myself or other members of the staff, or hopefully even better, the Planning Commission members themselves, about anything you're seeing in there that you're anticipating wanting to see changed before you get it, wanting to change once you get it. The more of that dialogue we do up front, the more of it we can catch now, and process-wise, that's better. So thank you to everybody for getting us to this point tonight. You were just sort of given a link to the whole darn plan. We actually assigned our Planning Commission members individual chapters to focus on. So each of them is sort of more expert in a couple of chapters right now than the other. And the last thing I'll say, just to preempt a couple things, is there's a few places I know I've got some language to add that you will likely see in the transmittal. I'll just go over those briefly because you might not comment and say, I need them. We have had our preliminary review by the staff of the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. We have a hearing with the Planning Advisory Committee scheduled for next week on that draft. The staff identified two things that we didn't have in the plan that we needed to for them to find that it was a complying plan. Those were a rundown of how our borders line up with our neighboring communities and their zoning. We do it kind of dispersed throughout the plan, but they wanted it all on one page, so we're going to do that. And a policy on the extraction of gravel, because state law says you have to say gravel somewhere in your plan, so we're going to do that.
I noticed that was missing.
Where's the gravel extraction policy, guys? So, so we'll take care of those two things.
What's the first one, how our ordinances line up?
It's discussing how we relate to our neighboring communities. So typically you look at a neighboring community and you say, let's take Essex Junction. Williston is divided from Essex Junction by the Winooski River. The land use designations in the two municipalities are compatible and relatively similar on either side of the border. We're connected by a state highway that goes over a bridge. Wastewater treatment capacity of the plant, which is in Essex Junction. And you just say that for each of your bordering communities. So you're acknowledging that the world does not end at the town line and that we live in a region. And the Regional Planning Commission, for some reason, cares about that. It's in their name, I guess. So we're going to do that. There are two places I'm going to add some language that I'll highlight at the May 20th hearing and talk over with you. And one of them is in the front matter, the how to use this plan and discussion of action items. I'm aware that we want to say something more about how the strategies and actions and prioritization in the town plan relates to the select board's mission and goals of doing its own yearly strategic planning and work planning. And what I want to say in probably more words than this once I write it is those two things will be complementary to each other and not in conflict with one another. The select board, in doing that annual planning, whether it's capital planning or work planning or other kinds of fiscal planning, is going to be dealing with up to the minute conditions, right? Funding changes, grant opportunities change, priorities change, some building falls apart and you just got to drop everything and fix it, all those kinds of things. But those things would be addressed by the select board in harmony with the town plan. So in short, if the town plan says go north and suddenly the select board yearly planning is saying, no, let's go south, well, then we've got a challenge. We need to go amend the town plan and bring the things back into accordance. But there's room within the adoption of this town plan and its strategies and actions for the select board, the town manager's office, the town department heads, all of us to continue to do the work planning and strategic planning that we do with that greater plan in mind. And I just want to get that statement articulated a little better so that nobody gets the impression there's commitment in the town plan, but with acknowledgement that we are in the real world where things change and where resources fluctuate. So if somebody comes in and says, it's in the town plan and you didn't do it, there's any number of reasons that might be the case. And I want to just acknowledge that in the text. The other is I've been working on fleshing out the town departments and services chapter a little more and trying to reflect where the majority of the town's resources, i.e. money, are spent on public safety and public works, and just be clear that we spend a lot of ink talking about a lot of other things the town does, but it should be with the acknowledgement that we really do spend the bulk of our resources, our staff time, and our money providing very basic, or as one participant in our engagement process referred to them, core services. And just acknowledging 3/4 of what we do is we take care of people and we keep the roads working and we keep the pipes flowing. That's what a town does. We are lucky in Williston that we have the capacity to do a whole bunch of other interesting things that really flesh out this town plan. But just wanting to be clear in that departments and services that we don't lose sight of a little bit of the relative scale of the functions the town provides. So that's my homework that I already know. So if that was your thing that you wanted to see, I'm sorry, I know, I'm working on it. It'll get it in the transmittal draft. And with that, Eric, I might join the Zoom meeting so I can project a page of the plan if someone asks about it. But otherwise, I want to kind of move aside and just kind of open it up to the board and any planning commission members who want to come up and answer any specific questions as we keep going.
Great.
So I'll get there in a second, Eric.
So while Matt's doing that, I think the idea here was that we were going to have a general discussion, and if there are specific items that pop up now, that's great, but not required. So anyway, it's probably not the most precise format that we've ever had for a discussion, but
I want to add that just reading over this town plan, you know, I read it with pride. You know, the way it was written, you know, the introduction by Dr. Stephen Shepherd was impressive. Everything the planning commission did is amazing. You know, I thought about, you know, the public works department, you know, when everything works great, no one worries about it.
That's right.
Nobody really has much to worry about, do they? I noticed on page 160, under scenic view sheds, I think there's a spelling mistake.
Oh.
The accompanying report is available from the own planning office.
Should say town. We were probably debating whether to capitalize town or not. and then just
Leave it out.
You know, left the T out entirely.
Always capitalized.
Perhaps that I feel a lot of pride. I feel like Terry and I are always the ones who are like, there's an extra space or an extra period, and well, Ellie and Mike, you both caught like these errors. That's makes me happy.
Usually Jean catches it first, and now tonight it's Ellie.
I think I missed that one. I got 4 other pages of notes, but not.
You know, I remember sitting down with you, Matt, years ago, talking about historic barns, and your vision was spot on. You know, I thank you for, you know, the help that you gave me.
Well, I appreciate that. You know, I think there's a lot in this plan that is the result of our citizens and staff being really good observers of what's going on in town and really thinking carefully about, you know, what would make this a little bit better or a little bit easier, or, you know what there's an opportunity for. And that's a lot of like what we heard in public engagement. And people said, oh, you know, what about farm worker housing, or what about more places that small businesses can get started? Those kinds of things really do come from citizens. I do have one other thing I forgot to mention, which is in addition to the schedule I laid out for the sort of the formal process of adoption, we are doing a bunch of outreach to the public around the town plan as well. So We had a fifth Tuesday last week, and we took that opportunity to, hey, have another planning commission meeting over at the library, and we did it as a town plan forum. We did get a few attendees there, and we had a really great conversation with the folks who showed up. If anybody was around for Green Up Day, we were under the tent for Town Fair with the plan document and all the maps, and talked to a whole bunch of people there. Emily and I are headed to Rotary Thursday morning. When are we going to senior lunch?
The following Tuesday.
Next week, Tuesday, we're going to senior lunch at the rec zone. We are reaching back out to any other citizen committees in the town and willing to bring the road show there. So, you know, we really do want to make sure that when that one citizen shows up on the last meeting in August at your meeting and says, I had no idea you guys were writing a town plan, that you'll know that we tried our best to make sure everybody knew that we were trying to make sure everybody knew what was going on.
Maybe I'm asking a question out of order or something, but I'm wondering what you mean by the gravel extraction.
Just literally means gravel pits.
Like for private use, home, for public use, or?
So Melinda actually, come here. Melinda actually wrote the paragraph that we're gonna put in about gravel extraction. I'm gonna try to.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm just a little behind sharing my screen.
I mean,
How far in the?
it's really related to, yeah, it's private gravel pits. There's a couple in town, kind of in the north part of town. There's some gravel extraction that occurs off of Redmond Road, and there's also gravel extraction that occurs off of Fontaine Lane. And has been for probably since the, I don't know, early 2000s. So, and so the statement in the plan is really about making sure that the town's regulations, you know, that the town continues to regulate gravel extraction.
Sorry.
It's in 13.
Got it.
Sorry.
Nope, that's okay. So,
And talks just about making sure that the operation doesn't, doesn't create a lot of stormwater runoff, and that basically gravel extraction is undergoes site plan review, which it has, and then also that it recommends, reclamation after the gravel operations have ended, that the sites be reclaimed to a natural condition. And that's, I mean, pretty much it. It's a
I would
couple
suspect the
paragraphs.
state has regulations on that as well.
Right, right. And the town has typically, historically relied on Act 250 regulations to, to make sure that the gravel extraction is not creating an environmental, problem down the road.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how we're gonna, I'm not gonna read all 4 pages of my questions. I'm sure I have high confidence between you and Shayla. I will understand them before it becomes important. But I do have a couple of just maybe as a conversation starter and decide how we wanna deal with it, some more kind of generic things. There's several actions that discuss how the town will fund something, and I would like to kind of go through those and make sure that we're not committing to a penny on a tax or committing to funding GMT or committing, and I know we're not really committing to anything, but if you put it in here and it says, hey, Gene, you signed off on this, and it says a penny on the tax is the way to go. So there's probably half a dozen places where I feel it's a little too specific and that we need to either say, some other words in those. So maybe, I don't want to tell you what our next step's gonna be, but at some point I would kind of group those into what are we comfortable saying in that, in those cases. another sort of generic thing I have is, and I don't have any idea how to approach these, but there's some things in here that I don't really understand why they're in the town plan. I'm just gonna throw out there, starting a tree farm. It doesn't seem like it's raises to the level of being in the town plan. And there's a couple other ones, it's like, does it need to be in here? Was this just someone's idea that we threw in here? Or is this a really deep, important thing to some commission that that's just never come to my attention? So I kind of have that filter on a couple of these, maybe not even half a dozen, but there's certainly some things in here that I might, when we have our maybe broader conversation about this, Ted, is like, should that even be, is that a town function? Should it be in our town plan? I guess that's what, is that really what we would consider a town function, should be in the town plan? Let's see. I would like, I think chapter 4, economic development's super important. I would like to, maybe as a select board, gotta go through that in some depth. Maybe I'll just read it, an hour before so that we can have that conversation. Just because it has some things that I suspect we might not all agree on, but we ought to at least have the conversation about that or not. Chapin, I wasn't really gonna ask specifically about the trees. It was just an example.
There is an answer.
Okay. So chapter 4, I think, is really important. And then sort of my last sort of generic thing is I think that select board as a group, we should spend some time on defining the priorities, because, I just noticed there's some things like the TIF is in there twice, but there's nothing on conservation. So that would be another thing. I think it would just be interesting for us to go through and make sure that maybe, should every chapter have a priority, or are there some that don't? But just to make sure that it's a bigger group of people looking at those priorities together to decide these are the priorities of the town.
Hi. I know you're kind of giving your broad overview. I just wanted to nod that chapter 4 has gotten quite a bit of work in the red line version that we're going to be transmitting, so I don't know if there's a way that we want to get you that before you spend a lot of time digging into it. But we spent some good time in the last couple of days, like really kind of fleshing out the vision to actually focus more on economic development. Like, what does it mean that for economic development that Williston is livable, like that we've mitigated the vehicle impacts, and that we have a broad array of businesses that increase access to everyday needs, and like really kind of, and that it's resilient because we're not over-reliant on any single industry, and that it's equitable because we have access to people starting their own businesses and transportation that brings people to jobs and basically lowering barriers. So I say all of that to say there is a vision, and in that version you got, I think it was pretty sparse, and that there's details missing, and so maybe we can get you that before we make sure that we're not really overlapping on.
Yes, please.
You put a lot of stuff, like I'm sure, like so many thoughtful comments, and then we're like, all right, let's make sure that we're all looking at the same.
I would really appreciate that.
And so in this case, where you were able to produce, literally a table of comments for us, we take those, we write them right into the margins of that red line, and we start thinking about how to address them so that on May 20th, we can go through them with the planning commission and say, because sometimes it's literally just wording for clarity.
Yes.
What did we really mean about this? Or did we really mean that particular funding mechanism, or were we saying such as?
Such as, yes.
And we just didn't say such as because we've been talking about it for so long that we forgot. So, but Hannah's right. Economic development in particular, this is a chapter that drove me crazy in the current town plan, because we basically said economic development, there are things Williston's going to do that can be seen to be supporting economic development. You'll find them in the transportation and land use chapters. And the reason that's difficult is because if you go to, write like a downtown grant, and it says, how does this relate to your economic development plan? You're really doing some wordsmithing to say, oh yeah, that's in our town plan. And I know people wanted it to be. So of the full-fledged chapters we're writing, this is one that's a little newer, whereas, Williston's always had a big, long section about open space, or a big, long section about transportation or those kind of things. So definitely one, yeah, Hannah's been a huge help adding a bunch to it.
Excellent, great.
So like there were some other issues that I noticed, like a possible substation, public safety substation in Taft's Corners. I guess it depends what we mean by Taft's Corners, but my recollection, it might just be Maple Tree Place, but I thought there was a prohibition by the property owner that we're not allowed to put a substation, police substation there. And you know, there are things that I remember from 15 years ago that I don't know if that was. I never saw a document that said that, but I seem to recall something like that.
You brought that up a couple times, and I'm curious
yeah.
too.
It was, oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, when the town owns some land in Maple Tree Place, and there was conditions, I think, on that parcel when we acquired it to not build a new public safety building on it. We've had some conversations about potentially leasing some space there, but it's a good point to, just kind of revisit those objectives. And we've had ownership change in Maple Tree Place a few times through the years as well. But
yeah,
we did.
Okay, so that what my recollection is overstated. But there are other things like the possible. I mean, it looks like the plan is thinking about the feasibility of a stormwater utility. The stormwater issue was resolved when I was on a hiatus from when I was not on the select board, but then it reared its head again after I got on the select board, and it was a significant amount of discussion and debate that had been resolved that the town didn't think that it would be wise for the town to have a stormwater utility. So I'm wondering if there are things like that. I'm wondering if that history was taken into account. And the pros and cons that were weighed at the time, and if those are still valid or not valid, I guess I'd need to see. But I'm just wondering if things like that were evaluated as the plan was being made. And I want to say early on, I've in my full-time job, I will submit things to a court, and they're really excellent. It's the best stuff that any judge could ever possibly have seen, and it gets ripped apart, and I don't like it. And so I really hope I'm not putting anybody in that position, and I apologize if that feels like that's what's going on, because it's not. But I don't know another way to phrase these things, but I recognize that this was a tremendous amount of work, and it's very well done, it's very well thought out. So
Except for the fact that Ted and Greta have 2 pictures in here.
I was informed of that.
I mean, we are the elder statespeople.
That's right. It's the chair and the vice chair. Yeah, come on. Yeah, and I saw. I didn't see the second one. I know one. I have a Celtics sweatshirt on. So
It's the same picture twice.
Oh,
It's
so
such a good picture.
Okay, well, that's really more about the Celtics.
That needs an edit.
We could,
Can't be the same picture twice.
My wife was impressed with the picture.
anybody who has pictures that you'd like to see in the please send them to us. Many of the pictures are placeholders, as you can see here with the AI image. I take any and all criticism or insight in the plan. It's a healthy part of the process to do that. And also keeping in mind that sections of this plan were written by all different folks across the last year and a half. And I do think there's been some consideration of some of that history, but the person writing that may not have experienced, for example, that history as a select board member. They may have experienced it as a planning commission member or a conservation commission member or just a concerned citizen. And that's part of the, I keep saying that the funnel just kind of keeps getting narrower as we get closer to the adoption date and we bring it back to the elected officials, is taking all things into consideration. What do you, the Select Board of Williston, want this plan to say? You're the ones with the broadest perspective on all of this as compared to the rest of us who each have sort of our own more unique perspectives when we're working on it. So.
Were you going to say something, Shayla?
Yeah, that's not related to Ted's comment.
That's okay. It's okay. Go ahead.
No, you turn the microphone off, Shayla. Just tap the bottom. Nope, the red light. There you go. You done.
Sorry, we're really doing a good job there. I wanted to go back to your funding question because I
I feel very strongly about the funding thing to make sure that you guys are comfortable with it and that we're all agreed on what we mean by it. Will you pull up our definition of what we mean by
Oh, yeah, sure.
fund? So the staff came up with a really good list of words that I think hopefully you guys have seen in that introduction, so that we are being specific, and people in the town who contributed their input and were part of the process can really actually see specific actions out of this document and not feel like it's just something that's going to go sit on a wall that Matt can occasionally pull out to write a grant. And so I wanted to just take a second to look at what we're saying we mean when we say fund. And I think for me, what's really important is, public policy is all well and good, but really it's where you put your money often matters. And that a little bit to Ted's point of like, well, we've revisited that, or we've studied that, or we've seen that. There's many things in this town plan that we have studied or we have looked at and that people have asked for again and again and again, and we haven't funded. And there's good reasons to not have had funded it at whatever the time is. But when we say fund, the point, my point would be that there is an opportunity for this body, and or potentially this body might decide, the people of Williston, to say, yeah, okay, we're gonna put money towards that, and it might be significant, or no. You brought us that community center, we said we wanted it, and wow, is that thing expensive, and we've gotta staff it, and we don't wanna do that. And then we can, and then the decision can be to say like, okay, and maybe Ted, we need to put it in writing in a different way so that it has some staying power. Like, we've decided to not do that. Not that we can never revisit it, but that was put forward, and there was a decision. And so I think to your question, I don't want the select board, A, this document cannot hold you to funding something that's not legally possible, and B, it's not appropriate. So it's not what we mean when we say fund it. We're not saying you are committing to funding it. We are saying you're committing to bringing the question, do we fund this, yes or no, forward to the appropriate body. And that might be just this body. And the answer might be no. But I think the clarity of that, to me, the clarity of that is important. And I'm open to putting like other words into some of the sentences. I think that's sort of what you're saying maybe. I don't have a problem with that piece. I think to me it's more this question of like, the people of Williston have seen this thing come up again and again and again and again and again, and like, all right, let's make a decision.
So it's a step in the process. I mean, I saw those as.
You got it.
We've done the other steps. We don't need to study this or.
Right,
evaluate
please
it.
don't bring me another study. I don't want to see it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So us saying, when we see fund in action, would be thinking of it as, we've done the other steps. We don't need to go back.
You got it.
That I totally understand and agree with. But I also know that not everybody who reads this document is going to have the nuance of, well, this isn't committing the town to calling the question. It's, we've gotten to this step. So we're agreeing on this.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
No, that's fine.
And don't go anywhere, because I have a specific question, and I know, I think you have the right answer for it. So I don't know if everybody else is okay on the funding thing? Okay. I did have one sort of specific one, and in chapter 16, there was one about reviewing standards, and I think I've expressed a couple times, and I've talked to Shayla and Ellie about this too, is this kind of new concept that now that the state has required us to increase density inside the sewer district, are our ordinances prepared to address that? And just, to be clear, if we're gonna tear down a small house and put in a 4-unit condo, apartment, whatever, that's really different. Where's the garbage go? Where's the parking go? Where's all that kind of stuff? And so I just like to be proactive rather than reactive. But anyways, I thought it might be in 16.5, but I wasn't sure if it was. And if it's not what you were thinking, is there someplace we could put it? I think if you go up a little bit.
I think
just 16.5 in general, I think, is, I don't know if that was something, evaluate and
Evaluate.
design standards, 5.2 maybe?
Yeah, so this is all about sort of the residential zoning district has always just been kind of the suburban residential district. You know, with that, or it used to be called the medium density residential district when it was, you know, somewhere between 2 and 3 dwelling units per acre for a really long time.
Right.
So with the change in state law and with that all being in the sewer service area, it's 5, it can be more, it can be 7 in an affordable project. And one thing we were really sensitive to when we watched that legislation go through in Montpelier was, boy, there's a whole bunch more considerations as you add that much density to a piece of property. Where's the trash can gonna go? Where are we gonna tell people they need to park? How do we deal with entrance features and just make sure we don't have a, you know, 4 garage doors across the front of the street, which is pretty unpleasant. And the residential district has always been very light on any sort of building design standards at all. Because it's been about platting a half-acre lot and meeting some setbacks and then, hey, you know, build whatever house you want. And the fact that you could only build 1 house on that size lot kind of just controls for wonky design. It doesn't really matter what the houses look like because they're all far apart enough to, you know, not really create burdens on one another or aesthetic impacts that people don't like. So we're in a different world now, and it's a world that's much more supportive of a diversity of housing types, which is great. But in the current zoning, I experienced at one point somebody proposing 4 units on a property that had once had 1. They happened to have the acreage for it, but it was going to look a lot denser. This is over 10 years ago, but it was in Williston. And it was really hard for the Development Review Board to deal with that application because the design the applicant had picked, for lack of a more technical term, was really ugly. And the DRB was looking at us on the staff and saying, it's so ugly. It just doesn't look like anything in the neighborhood, and it's imposing, and it doesn't look like it would be a nice place to live. I know the number of units works, but can't you come up with something how we can say no to this? And they ended up leaning kind of on a dark corner of the growth management process and saying, well, you're technically approvable, but we won't give you allocation. And that didn't feel like a very robust way of dealing with that. So yes, that's what the whole 16.5 section is about, is we've got this more density. It raises some issues about design and raises the question for the Planning Commission of, hey, if you're gonna have this kind of density, are there a few things you wanna have a little more say about when somebody builds out?
And I don't mean to get in the way of, I mean, the intent of allowing more units. I mean, that's for more housing, and I don't want to get in the way of that, but I was a little bit concerned because it was also like medium term, and it was like, well, if we're not gonna get to it for 3 or 4 years, that could be too late, so I just was a little concerned.
No, it's a good, the plan, the timeframe we could address, because one thing we've talked about is we've done Taft's Corners and we've done Village.
Yeah.
And so like, there's really good, in the 2 other places where we have res, where there's water, sewer, and that these new standards that Jean's talking about apply, we've got real good, like, zoning control, and like Matt was saying, the residential zoning district just doesn't have that. So I think that's why it's specific to residential zoning. I don't know if that was part of your question, but
Yes.
I would be very open to changing that timeframe.
Great. Thank you. Ted's reading it now, but he's only up to chapter 3, so we could be here a while. No, just kidding, he's not.
I did notice a couple of the numbers were off on things, which it's not like I never did that myself, but I thought in section 6.9, things under that started saying 5.9.1.
Oh, okay.
And then, yeah, similar things like that.
Yeah, we'll be giving a harder and harder read of all of the numbering and formatting too as we keep going. You'll notice in this draft, for example, like the colored boxes break across pages. We won't have that. You know, it'll be another 100 pages longer because we'll be putting space in, but
yeah,
it'll look nicer. Okay. That's all really, really helpful. And, you know, I mean it, we'll take comment by phone, sitting down in front of the monitor, email, whatever works for folks. And things like numbering and typos too, that are non-substantive, we can fix those at any point in this process. And, you know, in the modern age, going to press with this, we're not gonna go, you know, have Minuteman make us 100 of these. We're gonna make a couple on the printer for desk copies, and it'll be a living document on the town's website. That's one other thing I did want to mention. I don't remember if I added it in yet, but I'm going to in Chapter 18. One of the goals within that implementation table is to turn that table into a live dashboard so that we can keep track of what we have actually accomplished. And, you know, do sort of like we've done before with a little red light, green light, you know, what progress has the town made on its goals for economic development or land use, et cetera. And make sure that you and we are all able to communicate back to the citizens of the town, hey, we're actually, you know, we're actually doing these things, and seeing the effects of them eventually as well, which is kind of the way CCRPC does it with the regional land use plans. They say we have a housing goal, here's what we did toward it, and then they also say here's what we're seeing out in the world, like is it working, is it having an effect or not?
Would that be for every part of the plan?
So you would, with the table at the end, that's all of the action items, you could just have a checkbox, yes, we did this, no, we haven't done this yet, that sort of thing. The sort of, are we seeing it out in the world would be more at the objective level. Because the sort of our definition of an objective is what does Williston look like if we're meeting our vision. So, you know, if the objective says there's a wider diversity of affordable homes in town, you just do the numbers and say, well, here's what got built in the last 5 years. That's more diverse than it once was, or it's not, and you know, move on that way. But we do want to keep the document off the shelf. We want to keep the document from collecting dust over the next 8 years, and you know, put it to use and be able to bring it out when we're interacting with our citizens regularly and say, you have this tool, it's the owner's manual for the town. Everything you need to know about what's going on in town is at least alluded to in this document, if not fully explained. And if it's not fully explained, we've given you a link of where you can go and do it. That's the other thing I do want to mention up in the front matter. There's a structure here about, oops, sorry, I'm scrolling with the touchpad. There's a section in here about the documents that we reference, and sorry, I have to figure out which direction I need to go. Yeah, here we go. Oh, nope, it is further down. There are a few things that we reference. No, it's actually even more. That's the example. Go down some more. I'm doing this zoomed in too, so it's.
What is that font, by the way?
It's called bumper sticker.
It's what?
The big one is called bumper sticker.
Oh, okay.
We actually purchased that font. We liked it so much because we used it for the bumper sticker. Branding.
There you go.
We used it for the bumper sticker, and then we're using it in the plan.
Was that Emily?
I picked out the bumper sticker.
Oh, okay.
Emily did like literally everything else in terms of like this thing looking.
She let him do that.
Somebody let me.
While Matt is looking for that,
thank
I
you.
did want to just answer one question from you, Ted, which is, like, when there is background information that we're not referencing, kind of back to my previous comment, I do want to make sure we do reference it. So, like, if there was a bunch of work done on stormwater, I think we should say in there, you know, whatever, I don't know what it says, that particular line, referencing or within the context of X thing, whatever that thing was, because going back to really trying to make sure we're not stuck in a like evaluating or planning or consideration cycle that is redundant, I think is a piece of having those words and thinking about it as a whatever progression. So if you find those places where we have missed that, tell us, and then I think this is a good follow on to that is all these appendices.
Yeah, so the way this is
Using things.
structured, there are these 4 top-line appendices where we say, these are literally part of the comp plan. If you need to know more about Taft Corners, if you need to know more about the village, if you need to know more about what's going on for the library right now, and if you need to know more about energy, we're literally adopting those into the town plan. We're saying these are a piece of the town plan. I don't actually think you could go into any of these and find a goal that wasn't also already written as an action in the town plan, but we just wanted to do this with sort of belt and suspenders and make sure. So that's these 4. And then we come down here and we say, oh, sorry, first there's 2 without links. We say there's some that are coming that we actually, think they should be adopted into the town plan through an amendment process once they're in place, the Rec and Parks Master Plan and Fire Department Strategic Plan. And then we also have things that don't necessarily carry quite that much weight, but are important to know about, foundation documents to the plan, places where we've gone and gotten a lot of information. So the whole report on our public engagement process for the plan, the town's housing needs assessment, and the most recent review of the Growth Center, which talks a lot about what led into that Taft Corners vision plan and ultimately the zoning, and maybe ultimately also looking at things like tax increment financing and infrastructure investment. We also wanted to reference all of the still valid transportation scoping studies that have been done, so that link goes right to the CCRPC page where all the Williston reports are, so that you can look those up, as well as a couple specific ones about multimodal hub and when we looked at microtransit. We have a couple of master plans for specific parks or conservation areas, and we have some other references that are still relevant about service delivery that we want to make sure right up front in the plan, everybody looking at this plan is aware that these other things also exist if you want to learn more about those subjects in town. There's Ted in his Celtics sweatshirt again. It's a nice picture. You're sitting at a table, you're at the town fair.
That's a nice picture.
Can my last comment, then I'll be quiet and go away, but I think the prioritization question has been one that we've talked about a number of times, and I think it is really important. So you see the stars in the plan where we have, as the planning commission said, based on the feedback and what we've seen, this is the areas that we think should be prioritized. I think it would be really awesome if the select board went through that, either agreed or disagreed with our stars, and then also added your own, so that we do have buy-in from you and what those priorities are, because it's a huge list and it can be overwhelming, and I don't know if we will gather them in one place at some point, so that somebody who's like, I'm unwilling to read a table of 200 things can find something shorter, but I definitely think that, I don't know what process Eric would want, that would be the least painful, to gather your specific input there, but I think having that from you all in agreement would be great.
Yeah, probably staff was able to, list all those starred items from the table. That might be a useful resource for the select board.
That's what chapter 18 is, right?
I think, but am not sure that the items that are starred in the table are the ones that we gave you as a top 20 list in one of the memos in the last month. But we can repeat that for you. When I'm back to you on June 3rd, I'm going to bring a revised version of that memo with the process calendar and sort of where are we. And I can make sure that priority list is pulled out on there again, and I can share it with anybody who wants it, and double check with everybody on my staff that it's still the same top 20 as we gave you a month ago. I think it is.
Well, I mean, like I said, there's absolutely nothing in chapter 13, the land conservation. There's nothing starred in that whole section. That's pretty important, I think. There should be something starred in that section. So that was sort of the thing that made me go back and start looking at it, and the TIF was there twice. I think the satellite police station possibly is something we have these conversations, but I think that's sort of top on our agenda, but there's nothing in public safety that's starred. So there's certainly things, I like what you said, Shayla, about like, we should maybe come together with, this is maybe a bigger list, and how do we get it down to something that's more like 20? I would be really
We
interested.
could eliminate the duplicate for starters.
Yeah, that starts.
By two, right?
A little puzzle piece. I figured out what the puzzle piece is for. What would be a puzzle piece? But I would be interested in the Conservation Commission coming and saying what their top priority in Chapter 13 would be.
I think also looking at it through the lens of like, you know, we do have this living, working policy document for us. And so how does that align
Right.
with what we've already identified as our priorities? And so are we missing out on things within this document that we have there and that we've noted are, you know,
Right.
really, you know,
Yeah,
top
good
priorities
point.
for
We already
us?
have two documents. And
Right.
like, how do we get the priorities to align?
Yeah.
Yeah, my thought operationally too, after you've adopted this new town plan, when we set the select board priorities for the year coming up in
Right.
April 26th, then the plan can inform that. So really the starred list.
Right.
That should really be something that the board is wanting to move forward in the, you know, the shorter term.
Right.
Idea.
I think if we're gonna, you know, in looking at like, you know, identifying and making these notations in this document, like that's going to, you know, be with us for so many years going forward, you know, we should make sure that, you know, some of these things we've already established as priorities are noted, so, yeah.
Speaking as, a large landowner and talking to other large landowners, it's important that, these primitive trails have clear trailheads marking that this is private property. I appreciate the fact that, the town has always been very responsive to problems, but there's a lot more problems that have been, that go on that have been, addressed.
Yeah, thinking about sort of maybe it's an action to look at ways we can, be a good neighbor where we have public access or public lands. I think we've had issues come up at various pieces of public land over time, and we try to address them, and there's always kind of that balance of, the benefits of having the trailhead with the burden it places on the neighbor, whether it's car door slamming or people trespassing and not using the land properly. We could look at adding some kind of an action about just sort of like landowner relationships and.
Yeah, I'm thinking more about private landowner than
Yeah.
public. Because the town, it's easy to conserve land, but it's not easy to control it.
Mhm.
The public are, they can be very invasive. As well,
Yeah.
I'd be here all night. I told you all the incidences.
So,
But just clear, if the town gets a trailhead, be sure that the signage is clear and that there is signage at the trailheads, because I know a lot of it is not.
Yeah, Mike, I'm a little bit, maybe I'm just, apologize if I'm misreading, but that's sort of my question about like, at what level of things do you put in a town plan that's gonna be around for 10 years? I mean, this isn't an ordinance document, right? And so I like kind of how Matt said, maybe there should be an action around doing something to protect private lands in conservation, as opposed to make sure this trail sign, so it's kind of a fine line. That's, I ran into a few times here where it's like, if we had to cut this document in half, would this make it? No, that kind of thing. So so if I misunderstood you, I apologize. But if the request is to have something in there that addresses the public use of private lands, I could totally support that. If you're asking them to put in an action that says, make sure all the trailheads have a sign, that would cross that line to me to being something that's a little too specific for a town plan, in my opinion.
If the town forces a landowner to give them a public trail, then the town should be forced to have a signage there that says,
Oh, yeah,
this is a public trail on private land.
yeah, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying it's
Right.
not a perfect idea. I'm just saying this is probably not the document that should live in.
Go on.
That's all I'm saying. Does that make
There's
sense?
just a lot of misunderstanding with the public sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
It's amazing.
so given the lateness of the hour,
Yeah.
how much more discussion do you want tonight?
I could do this all night, because I love this part of the job. But mostly what I'm looking for is a comfort level from the board that you've been able to air some things in front of some real-life planning commission members tonight, that you know how to find me and my staff, either through Eric or however we set that up, and that you understand that especially the rest of this week and most of next week, except for maybe Friday afternoon, is really our critical window to create that red line document for the planning commission, which will result in what you see coming back to you and what I come to talk to you about on June 3rd. So as long as we have that understanding, that's the sooner the better, is by the end of next week, but also understanding that you've got flexibility to keep adjusting things as we move forward, and there's even room for substantive change to happen as late as your July hearing if something comes up. I really appreciate the conversation tonight. It is so rewarding to have a whole group of elected and appointed officials who are all engaged and excited to talk about comprehensive planning for the municipality. You know, we do a lot of other stuff in my office. We do a lot of development review. We do a lot of enforcement. We do a lot of troubleshooting and management and trying to fix bridges and cut down poison parsnip and find people housing and all kinds of things. But all of it is better when it's happening because we're doing it under something like this document that we've been privileged to get to work on and develop for you. And it's I've been the planning director here in Williston. It'll be 7 years in August. This is the first comprehensive plan project I've ever been at the forefront of in my whole career, going back 20, 25 years now. It's a privilege to get to do this for this community in the leadership role, and I really appreciate it. So thank you.
Powerful statement. So it is. No, it is. Thank you.
I hope it
Thank
papers
you.
over the typos.
No. Yeah,
It's an emotional plea.
Typos didn't even need to be papered over. That was just fine.
Thank you very much.
So is there something we're supposed to be doing in 2 weeks, or before the June 3rd, or is this?
Well, let's
yeah.
perhaps get that straightened out. My thought was that we, well, what I was planning on doing is sending another list of things to you, Matt. And I guess
So we just do it individually
I should think so.
Yeah.
and let Matt kind of sort out what?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, what we're doing is we're turning any of that into marginal comments. If there's an obvious change for us to make, we're making it. If it's something where, oh, we got this comment, not quite sure what to do with it, that's something the Planning Commission will talk about on the 20th. And then we'll be able to feed that all back to you and show you the changes that were made from what you saw tonight to what you'll see on June 3rd. And, whatever remaining ones, there's still a question mark by, there's a chance to line those up for the hearing discussion that you would then have in July.
Can we, I don't know if I can talk here, but can we make sure that chapter 4 gets, the economic one gets to y'all? Because that's the one that had, I think we had stuff move around, we had points, we had, typos, we had content, but I think chapter 4 had like the most substantive changes from the version that you saw. So that might be worth getting to you before.
Yep, so we're all doing this, we're live editing this in SharePoint, and we can make that visible to you as we work on it. So you can actually see where we've gone in and changed, and that's the development of this May 20th red line that I've been talking about.
I would love to, if we had time on the agenda in 2 weeks, to just look at chapter 4 as a team, as a select board, because I think it's got a lot of content, and frankly, I started writing comments and it got too long, so I said, we should look at chapter 4, because there's just a lot of content. If it's new coming at us, if it's in time for material, that I think would be a reasonable use of our time.
Sounds plausible. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, I'll try.
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
Thank you.
So get your comments into Matt before the red line is gone past. So May 20th?
Yes.
Yeah.
The Thursday before May 20th, if you.
Okay.
Because we'll wanna distribute that to the planning commission so they can spend their weekend reading it.
All right, so it'd be Thursday the 15th.
Thursday the 15th.
Yep,
Okay. All right.
thank you.
Oh, perfect, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Yep.
Yeah.
Amazing document.
Amazing.
So that would bring us to the next item on the agenda, which would be the manager's report.
I'll be brief. We're excited to welcome back Police Officer Logan Young, who rejoined the department. He spent about 7 years with us, and he left for a couple years for a different career path, and then he's gotten back into full-time law enforcement. So we swore him in yesterday, and he is getting right back on the force. So we're excited to have Officer Young back in our police department.
And that brings our number up to,
I think we are down one position right now.
Okay.
We're looking at
one include, with the addition from last year.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Then on Thursday, we're having an event for our new library director, Kevin Unrath, a community meet and greet from 6 to 8 at the library, and also an opportunity to highlight the conceptual design of a library project. They've done some work to get some, I think, printed out the plans on some boards. Our architect's going to be there as well. The library trustees will be there. I'm planning to attend. It's really kind of a drop-in event. I think there might be some more remarks kind of around 7 o'clock or so. There'll be snacks as well. Snacks are fun. And so certainly that's going on Thursday this week. Everyone's got a hard copy of the audit. That'll be on the agenda for the 20th. The auditors and Shirley will walk through that. So FY24 audit. So.
I thought that would get Gene excited.
Yeah.
Now I know why there's not gonna be enough time for the plan, the town plan.
That's all I have for manager's report. I know we're running late.
Oh, so was the DeGraff mowing lease, was that an act?
Other business.
Oh, other business, okay.
Get to it. Yeah.
So,
Jumping
moving
ahead.
on to other business.
Yep. So the town has a lease agreement with the DeGraff Farm in Richmond to do mowing, provide mowing services at the Catamount Community Forest. This lease expired May 1st. Had an error. We thought it was the end of the month. So what happens is they mow. The first time they have to mow is in May, and there's been some good back and forth communication trying to do that before May 20th. There's a bobolink bird nesting habitat in that field, so trying to coordinate that. When I learned this recently, the birds have been coming back to this location for over 30 years. It's just part of the, how this species functions. It's really interesting. So there's been some good feedback, with our committees and the farmer, just trying to coordinate that. So just mechanically here, I'm suggesting for the board to extend this current lease agreement an additional 2 months. The Catamount Committee is going to be looking at this agreement, I think, at its next meeting. The farmer's willing to continue this moving forward, so I thought just give us a little bit of a period so we can make sure we have an agreement to still do the haying in May, and then we'll get something longer term potentially adopted by this board in June or July. So there's a motion I suggest just to authorize me to extend it.
Move to authorize the town manager to extend the lease with the DeGraff Farm for haying at Catamount Community Forest through June 2025.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
There are no nays. The motion carries.
Then I have, it is catering permit season, so we've got a batch here, so I can run through them rather quickly. We have, these are all at the Isham Family Barn. So this catering is Village Wine and Coffee, July 12th, a memorial service. And I should say this is a facility that's approved for these events. They don't need special event permits. So typically the board approves these. It's a lot of wedding events as well. So let's give the highlights here. Anyone has any additional questions, myself or I'm sure Mike can answer them. 60 persons expected to attend that event. The rest of these are all 802 Cocktails caterers. First is June 21st for a wedding, anticipated 100 people to attend. Next is July 19th. Looks like another about 70 people for a wedding reception. 25-person events on August the 9th. See what
That one's at the farm as well.
Yep.
I'm out of the know on some of this stuff. I can still probably answer any question.
Yeah, I might just be missing it, but it's a small 35-person event with bar service inside the bar. I don't think it's a wedding. And then a wedding on August 16th. 90 people expected, wedding reception inside the bar, and these are all 802 cocktails as the catering service. The board wants to consider approving the slate or individually, however I can guide you.
So it doesn't get as far as August 30th, because I'd have to abstain if it's August 30th. That's my daughter's one.
Oh, it's yours.
My, okay.
But it only got to the 16th.
That one is not on here.
Okay. Don't forget that one.
Remind me.
No dry weddings at my. What are we doing? Move to approve?
Yeah,
Yep, that's enough.
that's it.
Move to approve.
Is there a
As
second?
presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those nay. One abstention for some of them. All right, okay, you guys have it. Okay. Is that it?
That's it for other business.
I see we got a finance report.
Oh, yes, I forgot about that. Do you want to wait, have Shirley go through that at the next meeting?
Yeah. I haven't
Is
had
that
a
a-
chance to look at it, so I haven't had a look for it yet.
Can you give that report next meeting, Shirley? Sure. Okay, I'm sorry if we made you stay until this time to not get to present. So, okay. All right, okay. Are there any final thoughts on items from this meeting?
I just think of looking at the Observer this week, I hate to bring, keep things going here later, but I think about the frustration stews at the Williston senior community. I don't understand that much about it. I think that but it's affordable housing, is there anything that the town can do to help?
I chatted with Melinda a little bit about that over email, and there may be some opportunity with our housing trust to look into that community a little bit further. I'll dig into it a little bit more with her, and I can update the board on that.
I know the Williston Richmond Rotary has built, several wheelchair ramps for the, community members up there at the, the homes. It's one of the only affordable, it's probably the most affordable housing that we have in the town of Williston. I think it's important that, we recognize that. If there's anything the town can do to support it, we want to all support affordable housing.
That's what the trust fund is for, right?
We've actively created mechanisms to hopefully address some of this. I think, obviously it's a bigger issue. There's a lot going on there, but with some governance structure. But yeah, obviously these are residents that we value. So
Yeah, I just want, I understand we all value that. I just wanted to make, acknowledge that.
Any other items from this meeting? If not, there is an executive session anticipated, and
I will move to find that premature public knowledge regarding a labor relations agreement with employees would clearly place the town at a substantial disadvantage, and further move that we enter executive session to discuss a labor relations agreement with employees under Title I, Sections 313A1B of the Vermont statutes, and to discuss a possible real estate transaction under Title I, Section 313A2, and invite Town Manager Eric Wells to join both discussions.
is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion?
Well, you did that in one breath.
Yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. There are no nays. We are going to go into executive session. We will not be returning to regular session after that, so the public portion of the meeting is over. So, thank you.